Prime Minister Sanchez says it was not his intention to open the borders, but rather to manage migration in a way that guarantees human rights. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, has accused governments in many rich countries of adopting a despicable rhetoric on migration, as many ignore their duty to help people fleeing war or persecution. Grandi says economic migrants have different rights and needs from people fleeing war and persecution, but they were often viewed the same in the eyes of the public, which saw them as a threat. Some poorer countries had gone beyond their international obligations by accepting huge numbers of refugees, while rich countries in Europe, as well as Australia and the United States, no longer stand up for refugees like they used to. Grandi says this sets a negative example for poorer countries who wonder why they should bear the burden. On the eve of the World Refugee Day, the United Nations says a record number of people, over 68 million, were refugees or internally displaced. In 2017, nearly 3 million more than in 2016. One of every 110 people in the world is a refugee, and more than 16 million were forced from their homes for the first time last year, an average of 44,000 daily, while 70% of all refugees come from just 10 countries. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, says solutions to the conflict in those countries would go a long way to reduce the record number of displaced people. Now, Ethiopia's foreign ministry says South Sudan President Salva Kiir is set to meet opposition leader Riek Machar in Ethiopia on Thursday as part of talks to negotiate an end to a 5-year-old civil war. Machar has been held under house arrest in South Africa since late 2016. Foreign ministers from the East African bloc, IGAD, will then discuss South Sudan thereafter, followed by a leaders' gathering in the Ethiopian capital. Fighting first erupted between troops loyal to Kiir and forces supporting Machar, when then vice president, in December 2013, just 2 years after South Sudan's independence from Sudan. The ethnically charged conflict has killed tens of thousands of South Sudanese people. A series of ceasefires and pacts have failed. The U.S. President Donald Trump is doubling down on his zero-tolerance policy on illegal immigration, a crackdown that has led to at least 2,000 undocumented children being separated from their parents at the U.S.-Mexico border. As VOA's Michael Bowman reports, human rights advocates and lawmakers of both political parties are outraged, sparking action on Capitol Hill.
Once rare, but now routine, separating undocumented minors from their parents and holding them at an array of facilities near the border while their legal cases go forward.
This is not the Texas I know. This is not the America that I grew up in.
The latest manifestation of the Trump administration's determination to hold, adjudicate, and deport undocumented immigrants and to raise the bar for asylum seekers at the border has sparked a backlash. But Trump isn't backing down.
The United States will not be a migrant camp, and it will not be a refugee-holding facility. Won't be.
The administration insists it is merely closing an immigration enforcement loophole, saying past administrations gave preferential treatment to undocumented immigrants with children.
Word got out about this loophole, and the results were predictable. The number of aliens illegally crossing with children went from 14,000 to 75,000 in just 4 years, a 5-fold increase. This cannot continue. We cannot and will not encourage people to bring their children or other children to the country unlawfully by giving them immunity.
Trump has repeatedly blamed Democrats for Washington's decades-old paralysis in addressing immigration. Now Democrats and a growing number of Republicans are in fact banding together, but in fierce opposition to family separation. Republican Senator Ben Sasse called the policy wicked and harmful to kids, adding, quote, Americans are better than this.
What we're doing as a nation is inflicting enormous harm on these kids and on the parents when it's totally unnecessary during this time when they're waiting for their asylum hearing.
Senate Democrats introduced a bill prohibiting family separation except when a child's welfare is at risk. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives votes this week on 2 Republican bills that would overhaul America's immigration system and boost border security. It is unclear either bill can pass the chamber. Michael Bowman, VOA News, the Capitol.